Thank you all very much for having me here to talk to you today. I'm very excited to be in sunny Queensland, up from Canberra. It's hot, so it's slowly dying. Now, how many of you have heard about us? No hands go up. That's not at all surprising. So that is why I'm here to talk to you about who we are and what we do. Small business, as you know, is a significant part of the Australian economy. Everyone from the Prime Minister to the Small Business Minister to us keep talking about how important it is to the economy, how many people it employs, or small businesses generally employ, and how important it is that government keeps supporting this sector of the economy. They are significant employers. You can see there that we've got a significant number of the economy employed by small businesses. 1.4 million sole traders in the economy, which accounts for 61.2% of the workforce. So really, without these businesses, our economy would be in quite a bit of strife. And so given how important the sector is to the economy, in 2015, the government decided that we needed an ombudsman for small businesses across the entire economy, not just in the different states. So Kate Carnell was appointed as the first Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, there to fight for small businesses at a federal level. And never a more powerful advocate was there for small business, I have to say. So we were put in place, well, the office was set up on the 15th of March 2016 to advocate for small businesses and assist them in anything that they would need across the economy. And I should just say, if anyone has any questions as we go, I like a bit of an interactive session, so just pop your hand up. Straight ahead. It's an interesting question. The ATO and ABS have different definitions for small business. For the purposes of our Act, we have quite an expansive definition that includes any business up to 100 employees. So provided you're under 100, we can help you, which makes life pretty easy. That's about 99% of businesses in the economy.
And privately owned? Or?
Absolutely, any business up to 100 employees. So we have a couple of functions in our office. The first one is to assist small businesses. Now, this is what it says on the tin. It is one-to-one direct support for small businesses, whether or not they've got a dispute with another business, a government department. Quite often it may be the ATO that they're having a little bit of trouble with. You can call our office and get some direct one-to-one advice. We are growing that assistance function. Obviously, the more people that know about us, the more phone calls we get for assistance. And we're adding additional functions to that. So in December of 2018, we took on a role to support some mediation services through the Franchising Code, the Horticulture Code and the Oil Code. So when people have disputes in those particular areas, they can come to us. In March of 2019, we set up a small business concierge service for small businesses that are having a dispute with the ATO about a tax debt. And if they want to go to the AAT and dispute that tax debt and they don't know quite how to do it, we can help step them through that process. And coming in December 2019, which we're quite excited about, is a service to support small businesses access the CDDA scheme. So that's the compensation for detriment caused by defective administration. I always stumble over that one, particularly in relation to the ATO. So if the ATO has made an administrative decision and that's caused detriment to a small business, there may be compensation available, and we can step people through that process through our assistance function. So our dispute resolution process, look, it's essentially a 5-step process and we come in at step 4. So you can call our office and the call centre will ask for a bit of information about the dispute, the parties to the dispute and how things are going. And then our office has an obligation to refer that dispute to the most appropriate entity to see if we can get that somewhere that can help you. If there's no more appropriate entity than our office, then one of our case managers will be in touch with the business, get a bit more information, talk about the other parties to the dispute and see if we can't work out a way to solve that problem. If we get to a point where we can't solve the problem, we do have supported mediation services, alternative dispute resolution services that we can advise on, and we do keep a list of mediators available who can help mediate a dispute. Unfortunately, we don't have an arbitration function, so we can't determine the outcome of a dispute, but we do find that mediation is a cost-effective and far less stressful way of getting to the end of a dispute rather than trying to litigate. And through that process, the cost of mediation is shared by both parties to the dispute. Now, as I said, our assistance function is growing quite considerably, and the more we become known, the more calls we get, the more people know that they can come to us and ask for help. So since March of 2016, when we set up, our call centre's actually had 15,500 phone calls, so not an insignificant number of people coming to us to ask for some assistance. And 90% of those disputes are business-to-business disputes, as you would probably expect. About 10% of them are business-to-government disputes. About 60% of them are resolved by our office when they come through to us, and about 25% we do refer onto the small business commissioners in the relevant state. That's usually when we have a dispute that both parties are in the state and it refers to a state-regulated kind of area. Then we just say, well, look, we're not the experts in this. State commissioners the best, but we do a soft referral onto those commissioners. And on our website, just so that you've got a bit of an idea of stuff that we can do, you can jump on and have a look at some of the case studies of the work that we do. And cases include contract disputes, payment disputes, whether that's payment times or people not paying at all, franchise disputes, leasing disputes, we do it all. So that's what we're there for. And if anyone knows anyone that might need our help, we're here to help. Now, the other side of our office is the advocacy function. And so I should have said I'm the director of the advocacy function at the office. So this is the team that I look after day to day. And our job is basically to advocate for small business. So we do research, we do inquiries, we provide briefings to relevant ministers, and we look at the broader systemic issues that do affect small business viability in the economy. Since March of 2016, we've completed 4 major inquiries. We're doing another 2 at the moment. We've completed 3 reviews, 5 research reports, and made more than 250 submissions to various government reviews and inquiries. The Ombudsman, Kate, also gets out and about a lot. She's done more than 250 presentations and speeches since we started, so she's a busy lady, and I'm sure most of you will have seen her around the traps at some point. We also spend a fair bit of time in the media, more than 280 media interviews since inception. Now, as part of our role, we like to hear from small businesses. We don't just like to make decisions on behalf of small businesses, but with small businesses. So we've created a policy forum, which includes 31 industry associations and their members. And we go to that policy forum when we need to find some information or come to a view on a particular piece of legislation or regulation. And we'll go to those members of the policy forum that those will be affecting their members. So it provides a more unified voice for small businesses, and we can go back and say to government, look, we've consulted with these groups, they represent this many small businesses, and this is what they're telling us that they need. So that's a really important way to engage with our office. And we also have the MindHive platform. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of MindHive. It's basically an online system that allows you to crowdsource ideas, for want of a better way of putting it. And we do encourage small businesses to sign up for that. We quite often, if we're running an inquiry, we'll pop a challenge up on MindHive, which will ask a few questions that we want some feedback on, and small businesses can log on, they can give us some recommendations around that, or they can say, look, not comfortable putting this in a public forum, but can you give me an email address or a call, and I'd like to get in touch and talk to you about what's going on. So these are just some of the things that we're looking at, that we've been looking at over the last 12 months. We've got a pretty ambitious agenda, so I'll just take you through a couple of these, and again, stop me if there's anything that's of particular interest to you. So SME lending, we hear a lot about this in the press and how tricky it can be to get lending through. The graph over to that side shows you that lending in Australia, where it's going up, it's just going up to large businesses. So small business lending is contracting ever so slightly, which is a bit of a problem. And then this graph on this side shows you that small businesses are actually perceiving it much, much harder to get money out of banks than they have previously. So that's borne out by the fact that the lending is contracting, but there's certainly a perception that it's getting far harder than it ever used to be. So access to finance is obviously a significant problem for small businesses. I don't know if any of you guys are experiencing that. One of the things we're quite interested in is the move of businesses from traditional bank lenders to non-bank lenders and the fintech industry. more than 20% of people who are moving to the fintech industry are indicating that they're doing that because they don't want to use property to secure the loan. And that is also partly caused by young people opening businesses, and they may not have property to secure a loan. Their parents may not be prepared to stump up the family home to go guarantor, so they need to look around for a lender who will take some other form of security. So 21.3% are saying that they're looking to avoid using the family home to secure borrowing. So they're moving to the fintech sector. And the fintech sector has grown exponentially over the last few years. In 2014, there were fewer than 100 fintech lenders in Australia. Currently, there are over 700 of them in the country. So there are huge numbers of them. And their lending has grown enormously as well, from about 10 million in 2013 to over 389 million this year. So because so many people seem to be borrowing from fintechs, we formed a fintech lenders guide. And this is just to help small businesses if they think, I'm done with the big bank, don't want to put my home up for security, what they need to know in borrowing from fintech lenders, because they are regulated differently. There's a little bit less regulation around commercial borrowing. So there are some things that people need to be really conscious of when they are borrowing from fintech lenders. Now, the other side to this coin is that where business owners go for advice is changing. So the SME Growth Index this year found that only 1 in 20 small businesses would consider their accountant to be their most trusted advisor. 2 years previously, it was 1 in 10. So accountants are falling off the edge of the cliff in terms of trusted advisors. The vast majority of small businesses seem to be going to another business, a supplier, or one of their colleagues. Friends and family are also up there. The bank manager, which used to be the most trusted advisor, is down to about 2% of people actually putting their faith in their bank manager. So people always chuckle at that one. So in order to help accountants and bookkeepers help their clients, we've created a business funding guide that steps through a whole range of steps to help those businesses get what we call finance fit. So making sure, it sounds really basic, but making sure that they've got very clear profit and loss, that they're not using their personal credit card to pay business expenses, that they've got a really solid business plan before going to get lending. And it's something that people have found incredibly useful, are asking for more copies of, and we're always taking feedback on the document and amending the document as it goes. So if anyone jumps onto the website and has a look and wants to provide feedback, feel free to send it through. Now, around lending, of course, the issue that we see most often is a cash flow issue. So the vast majority of small and medium enterprises, when we speak to them, tell us that they've got cash flow concerns. And this often comes down to payment times and practices of their larger business partners. So in Australia, unfortunately, payment times are consistently high. They're always hovering above 30%. They've come down slightly, but not as much as we would like to see. And they do cause a major problem when large businesses are extending payment times for small businesses. It's something we hear quite often from small businesses, is that they used to be on 30-day payment terms and now they're on 65-day payment terms, and they're just not quite sure what to do. So we've been engaging quite heavily with the government, the Department of Employment, as they look at payment times. Something we're quite interested in at the moment is, you may have seen in September of this year, the AFR was reporting that CIMIC subsidiary UGL had extended their payment times from 30 days to 65 days, and were then offering invoice financing for people who wanted to get paid within the 30 days. So I'll touch on that in a minute, but it's an interesting phenomenon that's becoming more and more common. No, they can extend their payment times. That's a business decision. The small businesses can say, yes, we accept the new payment times, or off we go, we're not going to supply you.
Pay you within the normal period, but we're going to take a substantial discount.
Yeah, so the supply chain financing, different supply chain finances offer differing discounts. So Greensill, which is one of the bigger ones, say that their average discount is between 2 to 3%, which can be significant for some businesses depending on where their margins are. Sometimes businesses say, okay, that's fine, we're prepared to cop the hit. I might actually just skip a couple of...
They didn't actually own the debtor finance company. So we're saying you can
go to an alternate finance company. Yep. So there are quite a few, no, you're fine, there's quite a few in Australia that have started to operate. This has sort of developed a lot since 2017. It's become much more popular. But what they will usually do is they'll say, okay, we used to pay you on 30 days, we're extending it to 65. If you want to get 30-day payment terms, you can get invoice financing through this third-party financer. Now, from our perspective, we know of a lot of small businesses that have used invoice financing really effectively to manage their cash flow and fund growth. And if a large business is saying, okay, we'll pay you in 30 days, but if you want it in 5 days, you can go to this invoice financing company and, take a hit but get your money in the door in 5 days, that's not a problem. But when they're extending out payment times beyond the industry average in an unreasonable fashion and then saying, but if you want to get paid in your 30 days, you can take a hit, that's where we start to have a bit of a problem with it. So one of the things we're doing at the moment is reviewing supply chain financing and people's experience with supply chain financing, both good and bad. So we'd love to hear from you. If you've had an experience with supply chain financing, are concerned about it, use it to great effect in your business, please pop us an email through to the inquiries at ASBFEO, and we will include that in the review. Another one that we're looking at is insolvency practices. So during our small business loans inquiry a couple of years ago, we found that small businesses, once they get into an administration position or an insolvency position, they lose all sight of what's going on in the business. Once the administrator comes in, they lose control, they can't contribute to the process, they find it really difficult to get documents. So we've instigated an inquiry to understand a bit more about that process and how small businesses could play more of an active role in the process if they are unlucky enough to get into an insolvency situation. And for the vast majority, they don't come into contact with insolvency until it unfortunately happens in their business. So it is a difficult and opaque system to navigate. We've had about 230 survey responses so far, which is great, and 20 individual submissions. And something we're seeing coming through the case studies really strongly is that small businesses seem to leave it too late to ask for help. So when they start to recognise the signs of financial difficulty, that's when they need to go and speak to someone about how to get the business back up onto an even keel, I suppose, rather than leaving it a bit too late and then they get caught by the insolvency processes. Another one that we've looked at is access to justice. So this is something that we hear quite a bit. When a small business has a dispute with another business or with a large entity, they're not quite sure where to go to get some advice on it. And a lot of the time it's far more expensive than it's worth to go down the court route to try and get an outcome. So our first phase was looking at the different problems for small businesses, the nature of the disputes that they were having. So the vast majority are business to business, and payment times remain the biggest problem for small businesses when they're not getting paid on time. The average cost, as you'll see on the slide, to resolve a dispute is about 130 grand. So unless you're talking about a fair bit of money, it's probably not worth going to court. Now, phase 2, which we're in the process of finalising at the moment, looks at different pathways for small businesses. So it goes through all of the different types of alternative dispute resolution pathways, making sure that we can really clearly explain the different options for small businesses when they're going through a dispute. Energy, which is always in the news. We hear a lot about this. Small businesses pay more for energy and use more than residential properties, so that's a problem. There are some options available for businesses that want some advice on how to reduce their energy usage. So the Business Energy Advice Program and the Small Business Energy Check are really useful tools if people want to go and use those. Another thing that you may have heard a bit about recently that we're quite interested in is unfair contract terms. So we've done a review of unfair contract terms. We're pleased to see that the extension of unfair contract term regimes to small businesses has improved in some industries, but we would like to see it go further. So ultimately we want unfair contract terms to be made illegal and penalties applied for when they are included in contracts with small businesses. That would be ideal. They do and continue to do work around it. Treasury is looking at them at the moment and their application across all small business contracts. So that's what we're particularly interested in at the moment. And the ACCC do prosecute cases around them. When they've got one that ticks all the boxes for them in terms of what they're going to do, they can do a certain number of cases a year. And we engage with the ACCC pretty heavily on the unfair contract term regime as well. And then another one which we hear all the time coming through our system is workplace relations as an issue for small businesses. Now, hiring people is obviously, when you're running a small business, it's a pretty big step to hire a new person. You've got to trust that they're going to be the right fit for the business, trust that they're going to work well with your other employees and do the right thing by you. And something that we hear consistently is that people are reluctant to take on additional employees because of the complexity of the workplace relations system. And they're worried that when things go badly, they're not going to be able to move that employee on in a fair and reasonable way, and they're going to be stuck paying go-away money if that employee goes to the Fair Work Commission or something like that. So there is a small business fair dismissal code, which was introduced with the recognition that small businesses are time poor and that the workplace relations system is complex. And it set out a number of steps that a small business would have to take in order to fairly dismiss an employee. Now, since it was introduced, it includes the word reasonable a lot, and reasonable is a very difficult word. Lawyers drive a truck through reasonable, they love it when it's in there. So it has become open to quite a bit of interpretation. Our office has done a fair bit of work reviewing the Small Business Fair Dismissal Code, and earlier this year we released a report on that review to government, and we're recommending a great deal of simplification of that system. Ideally, we would like a system that is so simple to navigate that it's almost impossible to get it wrong, so that on the odd occasion that it does go wrong, you've got to take a really close look at how that happened. That would be the ideal for us. The government is working on it. The Attorney-General announced, might have been last week, that they are going to release a discussion paper on the Small Business Fair Dismissal Code, so we'll be watching that with interest and obviously heavily engaging in that review process. Franchising is the next one. Now, I don't know if there's much franchising in your sector, probably not a huge amount at all, but it's something that we do hear about a lot and is in the news a lot, which is why we've taken on the Franchising Mediation Advisor role and do offer support in the franchising space. And the one that I'm sure will affect most of you is red tape. I love that picture, it's just adorable. But I think that's really what it feels like for a lot of small businesses, being wrapped up in government red tape. And I'll just read you some numbers, and I can't remember these, and you'll understand and forgive me once I get to the end of the list. But talking about red tape, just some of the pieces of legislation that small businesses do engage with on a reasonably frequent basis. The Fair Work Act, which has 1,035 pages, 221,382 words. There are 124 modern awards that need to be negotiated by small businesses. The Work Health and Safety Act, we've got 253 pages, 48,500 words. Competition and Consumer Act at 430 pages and over 140,000 words. And the Privacy Act at 380 pages. And then, of course, you get to tax. And there's a different piece of law for every different type of tax. So you've got income tax, excise duties, customs duties, GST, fringe benefits tax, wine equalisation tax. It just gets so complicated. And then when you get to the state level, you've got your payroll tax and the other things there. And of course, the Income Tax Assessment Act of 1997 was supposed to replace the Income Tax Assessment Act of 1936, but both acts are still operating concurrently. So you've got quite a significant, it ends up with 18 volumes of tax law. So trying to navigate all of that is so complicated for small businesses, and we get so many calls from people saying, we just don't know what to do. Where do we go with this? So the government has got a red tape reduction agenda. They've got a deregulation task force, and they are working towards reducing some red tape. They've recently made an announcement around streamlining the process and developing checklists for small businesses wanting to take on employees. And we're hoping that they're going to look at tax legislation soon after that and all of the other red tape reduction. But it's really a matter of us continuing to engage with government, identifying those areas that are really difficult and onerous for small businesses and seeing if we can find a way to get through those. There is some good news. E-invoicing, which will be in effect from January 2020. Small businesses that have a contract with the government and use e-invoicing will be paid within 5 days. And we're hoping that otherwise they'll be paid interest. So that's a bit of an incentive to the government to get their skates on and get the 5-day payments through. So huge potential benefit to the Australian economy of using e-invoicing, and we are encouraging businesses to take that up where they can and when they can. And there are other opportunities that hopefully, when the red tape reduction kicks in and all of the other bits become a little bit more simple, small business will have more time to take advantage of a lot of these opportunities. So free trade agreements, DFAT does a great job on free trade agreements and supporting small businesses to access those. Procurement is something that we're very interested in as an office, encouraging government to smooth procurement channels to make sure that small businesses have the best possible opportunity to get those. And research that came out yesterday was showing that small business procurement is up for government, so that's good, and we just want to see it keep climbing. And just finally, we have in our office a small business hub, so I'll put in a little plug for the hub. We're based in the centre of Canberra, and we have desk space, meeting rooms, free Wi-Fi, and a friendly face for any small businesses who are in town and need a bit of desk space, or perhaps going up to Parliament House for meetings and just need somewhere to park themselves for most of the day. So if any of you are in Canberra, you can book it online or give us a call, come and say hi. We like to talk to small businesses, that's what we're here for, so we'd love to see you. Thank you.